PodcastCoug Season 8, Episode 1.
You're listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. And now, here is your host, PodcastCoug.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 8th season of the PodcastCoug. I am James Laurie, the PodcastCoug, and you are listening to the PodcastCoug, where we're all things Cougar football. 30 minutes of Coug talk. Thank you so much for joining us again, the 8th season of the PodcastCoug, and it's our final season of the Pac-12, and we're going to break things down for you. What's going on today? Of course, the conference, and the second half of the PodcastCoug, we're talking about Colorado State and our game Saturday in Colorado. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's the 8th year, the 8th season we've been doing the PodcastCoug. A lot of fun, and it's not so fun when your conference has literally come apart. USC started it, and Washington, the Huskies, could have prevented from destroying the conference, but they didn't. And here we are at the Pac-2 with Oregon's Pac-4, Oregon State, Cal and Stanford. And obviously any day now we're going to hear what's going on with Stanford and Cal and the ACC. And of course, just a lot of changes going on, all about money. I'm saying my theory, it begins, the rooted cause is, we all know it's eyes on television, eyes on TV, is the revenue for linear and for streaming, right? People have cut the cable, right? You look 5-7 years ago, there were 100 million subscribers to linear, okay, mainly linear, which is cable, satellite, eyes on TV, 100 million, okay, households. That number today in 2023 is under 50 million. Okay, so the networks can't justify writing a check for $30 million per school when there's half of many eyeballs watching TV. Now, you've got a lot of people who've cut the cable. Most people have in some way or another, or they're not watching traditional linear television, and they've cut, or they're sharing. How about sharing accounts? When you're streaming, you can share up to 3 passwords on many of the platforms. And so that's loss of revenue towards the networks. We're talking about Fox, CBS, and ESPN, ABC. And that, it really, we did it to ourselves. That's my theory. There's a lot of truth to that. We're all pointing fingers at Kliavkoff or Larry Scott or whoever. USC, right, started it. But the bottom line is we did it to ourselves by cutting the cable. Now, I actually am still paying for Dish Network, and it's because of their technology and their DVR hopper, just the entire package that Dish offers is pretty amazing experience. Does it cost a lot? Yeah, it costs a lot. We're not even watching it, right, except for football. So, and it may be a few just limited television, but most people have cut the cord, and hey, we're streaming all the a la carte stuff on everything else in life. So that's the root cause. Revenue is kind of shrunken by half on the linear networks. They can't justify paying, and then you've got schools like Washington State that are in debt, right, with their build-outs, and Oregon State, Corvallis. So here we are. And we're looking at possibly losing the Power 5 status. I'm in denial. I believe that it's not going to happen. That's just a huge blow. It's devastational if we step out of a Power 5 school for recruiting, financially, and for recruiting, for everything. There's so much that affects how well we do. And we have been spoiled being in a Power 5 conference. We have a few disadvantages, of course, being remote. We do have a lot of eyes on TV in the Seattle market. As you know, we're the number 4th watched Pac-12 school in all of the Pac-12, where the Cougs in Washington State have an incredible amount of people watching TV throughout the whole state, throughout the whole world, actually. But we're very remote, and our little sister school, Oregon State, is kind of there with us. And it's very unfortunate that that what has happened, of course, with USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon going to the Big Ten, and, of course, Colorado, Arizona State going to the Big 12. Okay, so a lot of changes, and Utah going to the Big 12. So what we have here is the Pac-4, right? There's discussions, of course, that any day now, this week, next week, that the ACC and Stanford and Cal are in heavy discussions of joining. Now, of course, that's a real hardship on your Olympic teams to travel that distance. Okay, I'm believing there's three options, as you know. And we're going to start with the Mountain West Commissioner, Gloria Navarez, who's, she met with Washington State and Oregon State recently and made those pitches to both universities with her conference on the Mountain West. And the expectation actually is that Oregon State and Washington State, the clarity is not quite. We're not there yet. It's very highly complicated. It's hard to work out. We have a financial windfall with the Mountain West. They're paying about $5 million. Their big brand is Boise State. And we know that Stanford, Cal, and SMU in Dallas is reportedly going to get their approval to join the ACC. Now, it looks like it's going to be a done deal this week or next week, and and so they're hammering out the details. And so now it's a world of we're down to the Pac-2, Oregon State and Washington State. Now, I'm thinking ahead now in case Berkeley and Palo Alto do go to the to the ACC, okay, and SMU. So, what do we do? It's all centered around there's key teams. Number one is stability. The Mountain West has a certain amount of stability. Of course, back in the day they had the Utes. Utah and TCU were one-time members of the Mountain West, but. And they've continued to thrive. They just don't have the big television contracts. They do have a contract with CBS and I believe ESPN, but not big enough. Solid brands, of course, San Diego State, national championship last year in the men's basketball. Fresno State were the Mountain West champions. We played Fresno State in the LA Bowl, the Jimmy Kimmel. We lost to Fresno State, the Mountain West champions. Boise State and Fresno State are the linchpins of football, right? Along with the Aztecs, who picked up that win last weekend against Ohio. So, however, the G5 or part of the G5 is not coming to the Power 5 level at this time. And if you think one day it could happen where we get a couple of G5 teams coming into a Power 5. The Aztecs certainly deserve it. There's some stability there, something they can offer. They've got that San Diego, Southern California market, right? But Oregon State, Washington State, a little bit of uncertainty going on, and we have no idea where we're going. We have no idea, and it's unfortunate. It's like nobody wants us. It's like, the girl shows up to the dance, and nobody asks her for a dance, or nobody for the prom. She's standing on the sidelines wanting to, waiting for somebody to ask her for the dance, and that's not happening. So we gotta figure it out. We've hired a consultant, of course. So really we have three paths with the Mountain West, and it's the Mountain West, the American Conference, or rebuild the Pac-8. What I'm calling the Pac-8, Pac-10, Pac-8, Pac-12, whatever you want to call it. Now there are people that favor the American Conference and point out that the American Conference media rights, the contract pays out more school than the Mountain West, and it's true. The AAC does pay more than the Mountain West. However, there's two things to consider. Number one, the cost, the travel cost of the American Conference is significantly greater than the Mountain West, right? Especially the Olympic sports. So any of that increased amount that they would pay, even though we'd be coming on as a Power 5, really a big brand school, you're getting a couple million more than the Mountain West, and that would offset it by the increased travel expense. So remember, this is funding the entire athletic department, all the Olympic sports, the entire athletic department. Everybody needs an aircraft, right? Everybody needs food. Everybody needs a hotel room. And there's hundreds and hundreds of student athletes. They all have their games. They have their needs. Traveling is a big expense, huge. So you take a look at that valuation. You're trying to be a brand like Boise State, for instance, who Boise State earns they have a share an outside share of their, they have a greater share of media rights than the rest of everybody else in the Mountain West. Why? They bring in more. They have more viewerships. They have a powerful brand, right? They're the biggest brand in the Mountain West. And we have a lot of appeal, meaning Washington State has a lot of appeal to the Mountain West. Of course we do. So does Oregon State, right? But there are other factors with the Mountain West and the pitch that they can offer about their media rights contract, and which has a linear component. They do have a linear component with Fox and CBS. It's Fox, actually, not ESPN. Fox and CBS has a contractual relationship, linear, Mountain West. I think somewhere around $5 million per school, and Boise gets a little more than that. But that is up all the way negotiated through 2026. Now the American Conference, they don't come up till 2032. So the question is, your Oregon States and your Washington States, how are you going to increase value right there? How are you going to do that? So it's an intriguing element on all this. The Mountain West, we're either going to get it redone or renegotiate into 2026, right? And if you look at the Mountain West and the teams, there, and you put Oregon State, Washington State right there, into American or Mountain West, that would be the best G5 in the league, no doubt, 100%. We would be the best. How long would that last, right? How long is that going to last? And the recruiting, I mean, that's just devastational. If you're a 3-star, 4-star, or maybe a 5-star player, right? You want the exposure, unless it's a relationship, right? Every school has relationships with their coaches. But if you want to maximize your exposure to the world via media through Fox, ESPN, Apple streaming, you're going to probably choose a Power 5 conference over a G5 conference. You're just going to be on TV more, right? So big disadvantage of stepping down to the Mountain West. I don't see us going to the Mountain West personally. I see us going to a new Pac-10 conference. And this is what it looks like in my world. We're going to assume Stanford and Cal go over to the ACC with SMU. That's just an assumption, okay? If that happens, this is my opinion of the new the new Pac-10 conference. And I don't believe we can maintain a Power 5 status with this, maybe someday, but this is what it would be. Washington State, Oregon State, Boise State, Fresno State, San Diego State, Air Force, Army, Navy, Tulane, and Memphis. Those are the schools I think that we would poach from: the Tulane, the Memphis, Army, Navy, Air Force, San Diego State, and Fresno State, and Boise State. So that's it. That's where I think we're going to go. I don't see us going into the AAC or the Mountain West, but I do see a rebuild of the Pac, some sort of Pac that we're retaining the rights to that name. That is a big brand name that you don't want to give up. So it's already there, right? So here we are. We've got 2023 season. Now that's kind of that's your summary there. We're going to hear any day now about Stanford and Cal. There is no urgency on anything right now, right? So here we go. And we got the season starting on Saturday. Let's take a look at the current Pac-12 quarterbacks up and down every school. It's our final year of the Pac-12, and let's just take a look at this. What's going on here? We have got the right now just quarterbacks. Taking about Washington, the Huskies. Michael Penix, right? Amazing, right? He is probably the best quarterback Washington has ever had. They've had a few good quarterbacks, not a lot. Way back with Sonny Six Killer. But they've had a few quarterbacks, but nothing outstanding, superior. like Michael Penix, and they're marketing for the Heisman Trophy this year. Backup is Dylan Morris, and Penix is just a standout for the Heisman contender. Okay, and we got USC with Caleb Williams, who just in a phenomenal quarterback. Won won last year's Heisman Trophy award. And they've got some great backups with Miller Moss as well. And Oregon, you got Bo Nix, and it's a clear choice for number 3 is Bo Nix. And although he didn't play the first half of last season, he had an injury. Anyway, interesting. I think Oregon's going to show up somehow. They usually do. Okay, Oregon State. All right, DJ Ulagale. Right. This guy's great. Right. He transferred from Clemson. Good quarterback. DJ. Right. Utah's got Cameron Rising. And, this is the most difficult situation to assess because of Rising's recovery from a torn knee ligament. So it's going to be questionable how he's going to do, especially week 2 at Baylor. We got UCLA is, Ethan Garbers, and Chip Kelly hasn't announced who's going to start, but I think it's going to be Garbers. Arizona State is Jaden Rashada. Rashada, former blue chip recruit who announced an NIL issue, who encountered an NIL issue at Florida, switched and went to Arizona State. So we'll see what happens there. Of course, we got Jaden DeLora at Arizona, the Wildcats. No comment about that except one thing about DeLora. He possesses does he possess the maturity necessary to handle setbacks while making, if he makes some mistakes along the way, both on or off the field, is he mature enough to handle multiple mistakes? Okay. So, Jaden DeLora. Here we are at Washington State. We got Cam Ward. Now, I'm a huge John Mateer fan. Okay. I'm just huge. That's all I can say. So all I'm going to say is about John Mateer. I'm on the sidelines with John Mateer, right? Okay. I think Mateer is phenomenal. I know we've seen very limited play with John, but the moments that I've seen him, I'm just blown away. I cannot wait for John Mateer. And you know what? One of the things you got to think about these NIL deals, whether you're driving a new Cadillac or been given a new Cadillac or a car, truck, whatever, okay, Tesla, it doesn't matter, and money. Let's say you don't perform. What do you do? If you've had a donor that just gave you an $80,000 car or a $100,000 vehicle and $100,000 in cash, and you're not performing, you're faltering, and you got a backup that's better, how do you address that? I don't know. This is the Wild West, the NIL, the transfer portal. This is college football. It's just everything is so new. We don't know what happens, but again, big John Mateer fan. Just wait. Colorado, right? So, Shedeur Sanders, the son of the Mr. Prime Time, the new coach of Colorado, right? Deion Sanders' son, dazzled as a quarterback at Jackson State. Shedeur Sanders, and it's his dad is the head coach. The Mr. YouTube full-time crew. We're going to see what Colorado did. They won one game last year. They picked up a lot of 3, 4, and 5-star recruits this since Deion's been on board. We're going to see what's happening. All eyes are on Shedeur and the Colorados are playing their last year in the Pac-12. Berkeley, they got Sam Jackson at Cal, and Jackson arrives from TCU, and he had a whopping 6 passes with the Horned Frogs over the last 2 seasons. So we don't know what's going on with Cal. We'll see what happens. Stanford, their starter is Ariu Patu. Okay, so that's what's going on with the Pac-12 quarterbacks. And then let's take a look at our roster real quick, right? Of course, we got, like I said, Cameron Ward, John Mateer backup. We get running back, Nakia Watson and Jalen Jenkins. Outside receiver, we got Josh Kelly and Zion Nanali, right? And Leighton Smithson. Now, outside receiver, we're looking at Kyle Williams and Carlos Hernandez. Slot receiver, Lincoln Victor, right? Or we got DT Sheffield or Isaiah Hamilton. Tight end, Cooper Mathers and Billy Revere and Andre Dollar and Cameron Johnson. They're all at tight end. Left tackle is Issa Pole and Zach Miller. A left guard is Mawake Feita. And then at center, we have Connor Gomnes and Devin Kilani. And then over at right guard is Brock Dew or Christian Hilborn, right tackle, right? Fa'alia Fahamoe and Christian Nkanu. And on the edge, Brennan Jackson and of course, Rom Stevenson. And then Ron Stone Jr. is also on the edge, and Quinn Roth. Defensive tackle, David Gusta is there, and defensive tackle, of course, also is Nusi Milani. Middle linebacker, Devin Richardson, Joshua Erling. Outside, Kyle Thornton, right? And Buddha Alakula is also linebacker. Cornerback, Cam Lampkin. And Shaw Smith Wade Jr. Stephen Hall as well. Chris Jackson, free safety. Sam Lockett, the third. And Dominic Tatum, strong safety. Jaden Hicks, Reese Sylvester. We're looking good. I think we are going to be fine. We're going to win some games this year. I think we are going to win at least 7 games this year. We could be surprised. I think we're going to win 7 this year. I really do. We'll see what happens. We've got a lot of depth as well. So, hey, we're gonna take a commercial break. We're gonna come back on the second half of the podcast Coug and talk about Colorado State, which is straight up on Saturday, right here on the second half of the podcast Coug.
Hey, Coug fans! You're podcasting with James Laurie and the PodcastCoug Radio Network. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show, featuring all things Cougar football in Washington State. To help you get through the week, hit the subscribe button or check us out on iTunes, the App Store, iOS, Google Play, Stitcher, or at PodcastCoug.com.
The real estate agent you work with matters, and a great agent helps you own the home of your dreams. And your dreams come true with James Laurie at Coldwell Banker Bain, representing clients like you 24/7, from condos to colonials and everything in between. If you're selling, buying, need a price analysis, or just a contractor referral, ask James, winner of the 2015 through 2019 International Coldwell Banker Diamond Award, with dozens and dozens of 5-star Zillow reviews and Seattle Magazine's 5-star award winner for 2018 through 2020. James Laurie, Coldwell Banker Bain, at 425-466-3672 or jameslaurie.net. Rock solid results.
You're listening to the Podcast Coug.
2 running backs in with the quarterback. Signals called. All man in motion going through to the right side. Handoff. Wings out to the right side. Touchdown, Washington State.
You are listening to the Podcast Coug.
Welcome back to the second half of the Podcast Coug. I am James Laurie, the Podcast Coug, where we're all things Cougar football, all things Cougs, and we are in our 8th season of the Podcast Coug. Thank you so much for joining us, coming back every single year, episode after episode. We're just 30 minutes, right? Second half of the Podcast Coug, we're talking about Colorado State, right? Saturday, Fort Collins. The stadium is the Canvas Stadium. Is 6 years old, built in 2017. 4 o'clock, CBS Sports Network. What is CBS? Not the traditional, right? Not the traditional big CBS. We're talking about CBS Sports Network. So Dish, 158. Channel 158, DirecTV 221, Xfinity Comcast 412, or AT&T, Fubo, Hulu, or YouTube TV. There's your choices. There's your options how to pick up the CBS Sports Network, right? Weather is going to be somewhere, the low 61, high 89, somewhere in the 70-ish range. Season opener, of course, for both. Series, we're tied. We've only played each other twice in 100 years, right? We're tied at 1-1, right? We won, of course, last year 38-7 in Pullman. Neither team is ranked, and we've got a 12-point favorite going into Fort Collins. I've never been to Fort Collins before. Done a lot of skiing in Colorado, but never have been to Fort Collins. Now, if we show up, right, how is Colorado State going to consistently move the ball on Washington State and our defense, right? I mean, what feels like a long off season and months about talking about it. And of course, the expansion, the breakup of the Pac-12, everything going on with the Pac-12. If finally we are here to play football, and it's on Saturday, and enjoy the last season of traditional Pac-12, right? I mean, here we are. Now, the Rams struggled to adjust, right, with Jay Norvell's air raid, early last year, but, they actually competed within the Mountain West, although they finished 3-5 in their conference play, and although they won 3 games, but they were all bottom of the barrel teams in the conference. So Jay Norvell, trying to establish that air raid early on, just had a tough year last year with 3 wins in the conference. Year 2, here we are under Jay Norvell. He's going to give us a little bit of a challenge as the Rams retain most of their key players. They brought in a lot of portal guys, and of course they've got their leading wide receiver Torrey Horton and their star edge Mohamed Kamara, quarterback Clay Millen. By the way, Clay Millen is the son of former Husky quarterback, right? And former KJR Husky honk Hugh Millen with Softy, right? Hugh Millen, that's his dad, and Clay is back, and then they've got this running back Avery Morrow, and of course former Coug safety Aiden Hector. Which became a factor in the secondary of the Rams last year. Actually, a little bit on Aiden. He didn't work out at Washington State. He was highly touted. I actually did a deal with his dad. I sell real estate, and his dad is a developer, investor. So we did a deal together, sold him a really nice property they're going to develop. But I think they're going to put 3 homes on. So good dad. Dad's a USC guy all the way, big time USC guy. And so Aiden is in the secondary of the Rams, of course, last year and this year. Now, Jay Norvell serves also as OC, offensive coordinator, assisted by Matt Mumme. Matt Mumme sounds familiar, right? No, that's the son of air raid innovator, the grandfather of Hal Mumme. That's the son of Hal Mumme, is Matt. And they got Freddie Banks, who played at North Dakota State in 2008 with Jake Dickert, and when Jake was a GA at NDSU. So he's the Rams defensive coordinator, and that's Freddie Banks, right? So Colorado State they do run a version of the air raid, but they've struggled to get things going. CSU just had they were 105th in all passing yards last year at 197 a game, and they really didn't run the ball very well effectively, like 90 yards a game total. Almost like 126 in the country. So not very good numbers, both passing and rushing yards. Their defense did improve last season enough to be competitive. And, again, players to watch is Kamara. He's just lights out. And like I said, they picked up some portal guys, so we have no idea. I think that's going to improve their game. They're still in that rebuilding mode, but there's a couple to choose from. Defensive linemen, that the Cougs, they gave them a run for their money last year. Despite our 38-7 win in Pullman, they generated, pressure, like 1.5 sacks against us. And so, big question mark here on the opener. Kamara finished last year with 16 tackles for loss and 8 sacks. The guy sacks, he's good. So, here we are. Dickert's in his third season and Norvell is in his second season. We lost to, Norvell also lost to Mike Leach when he coached at Nevada back in 2017. So I think we played Nevada when Norvell was the head coach, and Leach beat the Wolfpack, right? So no team in the FBS has yielded more sacks than 59 that CSU gave up last year. They may not have the strength to stay in front of Ron Stone Jr. or Brennan Jackson for the to just maintain on the Coug defense. I think we're going to throw a lot at them. I think Colorado State's going to be outmatched on Saturday. I personally think it's going to be a boat race. Okay. Now we always have these jitters. Every team typically, maybe unless you're Alabama, I mean, you're going to have these first game jitters of getting things going. But we had 7 sacks against Colorado State last year in Pullman, and there might be more of a pass rush this year. But if the Rams can give Millen a good pocket, they could be very good. It could be interesting. I don't know about very good, but it would be an interesting game if they give Millen some good pocket, right? But typically, regularly, I think overall, their Colorado State's passing attack, it's hard to see the Rams be consistently move the ball on the ground unless some miracle happens this year, especially with our defense. So we all know that Jay Norvell, he's a good coach. He's been around for a while. He's got a challenge, and a big challenge is to rebuild, not reload. He's rebuilding everything down at Colorado State, and it's going to at Fort Collins. I mean, it's not going to be easy, but he knows the type of offense that he runs. He's pretty good at it. But he's got a lot of challenges. Now, their offensive line has to improve, right? They just got to improve. And the only way, that's the bottom line. They've been giving about five sacks and 9 tackles for loss last year per game. That's crazy numbers, okay? 5 sacks they're giving away and 9 tackles. So, however, the odds to me is the fact that they're just not, a very good team. And Clay Millen, even though Clay Millen, their quarterback, completed 72% of their passes, how do you complete 72% of your passes and you're not much of a standout quarterback? How do you do that? That's wild. Like I said, they've got a bunch of new portal players. Hopefully that will spice things up. They got a new running back, new wide receivers, a new tight end. However, I'm a little concerned about it because it's not exactly forgiving, especially their non-conference games. They got a non-con with us, of course, and then they've got they're going to start with us. They have a week off after next week. They are on a bye, and then they go straight 11 weeks. You play at Colorado, you play at Middle Tennessee, then you've got Utah Tech, and you've got Utah State, Boise State, then you're at UNLV. No layups at all. Nothing easy for this team. And your bye week is week 2. I mean, that's just very unfortunate. Again, Kamara has a 72% completion percentage. And their quarterback, not Kamara. Millen has a 72% completion percentage, but they went 3-9 last year. So anyway, I've got Colorado State they're at 4 wins this year. I've got them at 4-8. Okay, that's just what it is. And I think Washington State we're going to be fine, no problem at all. I don't see any sort of surprises whatsoever. I think they're in a big rebuilding mode at Fort Collins, and it's going to take a little bit of time. So, but I do like our chances, of course. Hey, that's it for episode 1 of the 8th season of the Podcast Coug. Thank you so much for listening. It's the Rams and the Cougs. Happy Labor Day weekend. Have fun on Saturday. God bless, and go Cougs.
You've been listening to the Podcast Coug with your host, James Laurie. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. This has been a presentation of the Podcast Coug Radio Network. Find us at podcastcoug.com.